Okay, so for percents now, we've been talking about converting between percents and fractions and percents and decimals and back again. And we've looked at some of our benchmarks. Now let's look more closely at some exact calculations. When we were looking at fractions, we looked at a proportion. For example, the fraction 2/7. That means 2 out of 7. When we wanted to change it to a percent, of course, a percent is out of 100. So to find that percent, we need to figure out how much out of 100 is 2 out of 7. And we were going to cross multiply and divide to find the missing number because this is a proportion. Anytime we have two equal fractions or two equal ratios, it's a proportion. So we do 2 times 100 is 200. Then we're going to divide by the 7, which makes 28.57143 approximately. Of course, we got to round that at some point. Generally, we would say either to the nearest tenth of a percent or hundredth of a percent.
No, 57.
If I said to the nearest tenth of a percent, that'd be 28.6. You're correct. So that is 28.6 out of 100 is 28.6%.
For whatever reason, it seems like it should be more than that.
2 out of 7.
Yeah, it just seems like it.
Well, this is where those benchmarks of thing come into play. 2 out of 8 is 1/4, right?
Right.
Which is 25%. So that makes sense. That's a little bit more than 25%.
Yeah. Okay.
But with that idea there of a proportion, we can start looking at calculating with our percents. So if I have 28%, as we've said, I don't know where straight lines are coming from here. Let's get rid of it. As we've said, that can be thought of as 28 out of 100. There's the start of our proportion. So when we're dealing with a percent problem, what we have to do is we have to match things up with the 28 and the 100 in that ratio. So the 28, of course, is whatever it is we're interested in, the point of interest. It's some special group, some smaller group out of a whole larger group. The 100% represents the whole thing. Sometimes it is the starting amount if we're looking at a change. So the 100% is the whole thing, or the complete amount, or the beginning, initial amount. The percent itself, the 28 in this case, is a piece or a portion of what we're looking at. Your textbook actually names them the portion and the whole. We don't necessarily need to call them that, but the big thing is to be able to match them up with whatever relates to them. So if you look at simple word problems for percents, and by simple I mean just the numbers, no story behind them. Let's say we might be asked, find 32% of 65. 32% is 32 out of 100. I always start with the percent in these because it's a nice easy ratio, a fraction if you want to call it that. And it's a nice way to start our proportion. So now we have the other number in this problem is the 65. Does that 65 match up with the 32 or the 100? Well, yeah, we're asked to find the 32. So the missing number matches up with the 32. The 65 is the whole thing. Excuse me. One way we can think of this is where it says of 65, you can think of that as out of 65, which implies it's out of 60, yeah, divided by 65. So now we can cross multiply and divide. 32 times 65 and then divided by 100 is going to be, what's that? Yeah, 20.8. So 32% of 65 is 20.8. Are you afraid if you say it too many times it's going to pop out of the mirror and come alive or what?
No. No.
Okay. So how about this one? Blank is 45% of 90. Well, again, I start with the percent. 45% is 45 out of 100. Excuse me. Where does the 90 go?
By the 100.
Yeah,
Or, you know,
blank is 45. So the blank goes with 45. So 90 goes with the 100 on bottom. Then what?
40 times 95.
Okay, which is going to give us
40.5.
40.5. Yes, 40 times 90 divided by 100 is 40.5. So 40.5 is 45% of 90. No, it's 45%.
That would be only if they ask you to round it, right?
Yeah. It's still 45%. The percent is 45. The result is 40.5. That's not a percent anymore. That's a number.
Oh.
I'll be careful here. About the one there. So let's say 30% of 70 is blank. This one looks very different. Not so much, though, in reality. 30%, of course, is 30 out of 100. Where's the 70 go?
On the bottom.
On the bottom again. 30% is blank. Again, implies the blank matches up with the 30. Of 70 means out of 70, so the 70 goes on bottom. Cross, multiply, and divide. 30 times 70 divided by 100 is 21. So 21 is 30% of 70, or 30% of 70 is 21. Blank is 140% of 30. So looking at this one, we're going to start with the percent. 140% is 140 out of 100. Now, before we do anything else, 140%. Since 140 is bigger than 100, what that tells us is our part that we're going to find, our portion, is going to be bigger than the whole thing, bigger than what we started with. Where does the 30 go, top or bottom? Bottom. Of 30, out of 30, the 30 goes on bottom. Cross, multiply, and divide. 140 times 30 divided by 100 is going to be 42. So that makes sense. 42 is 140% of 30. 42 is a little bit bigger than 30. So 140% makes sense. Well, let's change things up a little bit. Let's see, 30 is 60% of what? Well, we still start out with the percent, 60%, 60 out of 100. Where's the 30 go?
On top.
On top. 30 is 60%. The 30 goes with the 60 now. Cross, multiply, and divide. 100 times 30 divided by 60 is 50. So 30 is 60% out of 50. Excuse me. $42 is 30% of. Tell me how to set this up.
So it's 30 over 100.
Yep.
40 on top.
42 on top. Okay. Cross, multiply, and divide. We get 140. How about this? 80% of blank is 120.
Wait. You got 140 for the last one, right?
Yeah.
You know what?
80% of blank is 120. Tell me what to do.
Over 100
80 over 100 is my percent. Okay, where's 120 go?
on the bottom.
Is 120. 80% is 120. 120 goes with the 80 on top.
What?
Out of blank means the blank goes on bottom. It's really the same type of problem as what we just did. It's just in a different order,
Right.
worded differently. Trying to confuse you. That's my job. You're welcome. 100 times 120 divided by 80 is 150. The other way you can do it is when you have this on the end, you can rearrange. You put this first. You can rearrange that as saying, instead of is 120, 120 is 80% of 150.
That one was probably.
Thank you, sir. That makes more sense worded that way.
Yeah.
And usually it does make more sense when you word them that way.
Then why don't you?
Why don't you? Because the book sometimes doesn't.
Awesome.
In life, sometimes people word them
I
backwards.
lost it. I was so depressed, and he found it.
Yeah, I mean, you just got to be used to getting things in different wordings is all. What if we look at one like this? Now we don't have the percent. But I've been saying we always start with the percent. So what do we do when we don't have the percent? Well, we still start with the percent. The missing percent is going to be still blank out of 100.
And then 30 over 80.
Well, the 32 is blank percent, so the 32 goes with the blank. Of 80 is out of 80, so on bottom.
So it's 100 times 32 divided by 80.
Perfect. 100 times 32 divided by 80 is 40. So that's 40%. Yeah, 32 is 40% out of 80. So this one, what are we going to do? Tell me what to do.
So we go out of 100.
So blank out of 100, yep.
72 over.
Perfect. 72 over 360. So to find the missing percent, 100 times 72 divided by 360 is 20. That's 20%. Let's say blank percent of 90 is 54. How do we set this one up? Blank out of 100 again. We're missing the percent. So 90 go on top or bottom?
So we're on top.
54 is on top, 90 on bottom. Perfect. Cross multiply, divide, we get that's 66. It's 60%. So blank percent of 80 is 104. Tell me what to do.
So nothing over 100.
Blank over 100. What goes on top?
And then 104 on top.
104 on top over 80. Good. Most people mess that up because they always want to put the smaller number on top. But it is blank is 104
So it's got to be over 100.
out of 80. So it's going to be bigger than 100%. Very good. Cross multiply and divide, we get 130.
I'm getting this right. Of needs on bottom is.
Well, that's one shortcut that is sometimes taught is over of. The is goes on top, the of on bottom.
Really?
I don't like getting into that pattern because you get into some word problems, and that isn't necessarily true.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, it is. There's a pattern there, and these simple word problems, that is true almost all the time. But again, it's a dangerous habit to get into.
It's like playing Russian roulette.
Nice and him too.
Russian roulette. What's that?
Oh, she's been meaning to get a break from here for 2 years.
Okay.
But
Anyway, something for you guys to try. since we're having fun with these, blank is 32% of 120. I'll give you a minute to do that one. What did we get? Okay, so 32%, 32 out of 100. 120 goes on bottom. So 32 out of 120 is 38.4. You are correct. How many of you got 38.4? Good. We like to see every hand in the air. There you go. Try this one. 49 is blank percent of 70. So, how do we set this one up?
49 over 70. Question mark over
Blank over 100, yeah.
49.
Okay, so we cross multiply and divide to get
Yeah, where'd I go?
70.
Yeah, there it is.
70%.
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay. Oh, sure. So now for this one, 72 is 80% of how are we going to start this one out? Okay, 80 over 100. 72 goes on top. Perfect. Cross multiply and divide to get 90. Perfect. How many had all three of those right? Cool. What we just did is called the proportion method. Yes. The proportion method, to me, is the easiest way to do percents. Now, there's something called the rate method, which is the way it was always taught when I was young, where you turn the percent into a decimal. Kind of the modern version of the rate method is to use a percent equation. It might. If that last part made sense, you can ignore this a little bit. This is just another way of doing it. In the equation or the rate method, what we are doing is we're taking the whole amount times a rate to get the portion. Now, I'll be honest with you, I don't care much for this method because, first of all, it requires us to label things, the whole and the portion. Now, we talked about this a little bit in our proportion where, this number on bottom is the whole amount because it matches up with 100%. The 100% is the whole amount of the beginning value. And this is the part, or the portion that is referred to by the percent itself, by the 80%. So the same type of thing applies here. It's just I don't like having official names and labels for things like that. I like seeing patterns rather than memorizing things like this. The other thing is the rate is related. It comes from the percent, but it's not the percent itself. It is the decimal form of the percent. So if we were asked to find 30% of 90, 90 is the whole amount. 30% as a rate is 0.3, because 30% is a decimal, is 0.3. And you could just multiply to get 27. So 27 is 30% of 90.
So
This is
just another way
It's just
of,
another way of doing the same thing. You could have done 30 over 100 equals blank over 90, cross multiply and divide to get the 27.
yeah,
Yeah, I like the proportion much better myself, too. The only thing is, with a simple calculation like this, it is really quick to just do 90 times 0.3. And when we talk about interest applications and stuff like that, a lot of times the interest formula, the simple interest formula, uses that as a shortcut as well. Yeah.
So like
Sorry.
if you're trying to figure out, like you got a car and your interest is
Okay.
you want to just do it that way, right?
Yeah, yeah. So let's say we do 48 is blank percent of 80. So here the 80 is the whole amount. We are missing the percent. equals 48. So to solve this, if I put an x in here for my missing percent, how do I solve this? I'm going to have to divide by 80. 48 divided by 80 is 0.6. This is why I don't like this method at all, because this isn't my answer. X is 0.6, but what I'm really looking for is a percent. To change that to a percent, I have to move the decimal 2 spots. That's really 60%. See where this method is really confusing?
What's fast interest?
What's that?
I do that wrong all the time.
Yeah.
That's what I'm doing wrong because I'm kind of in my mind mixing them both.
Yeah, you're trying to mixing the two methods
And my
together.
decimal point's in the wrong
And
spot.
when you and I we're that same age group where when we were in elementary school and we were first taught percents, this is how we were taught to do it. You move the decimal point and you work with it as a decimal.
Right, and that's what I automatically do, so I'm,
But to me, that proportion method is so much simpler and so much less chance of making a mistake because you don't have to worry. You never have to move a decimal point.
I was following steps as we were going, trying to get that down.
I'm sorry, but I am losing my voice, so I'm going to have to cut it off here.
Oh,
There is a new homework.
I can't believe nobody's happy.
Due for Monday. There's a new quiz. Due tomorrow, so due Thursday at 11:59 p.m. Just a warning, coming up, unit test 3. April 1st, which will be next week, Wednesday, 1 week from today. So we're wrapping up the unit really soon.
So if we do real bad, it doesn't matter, because we'll just say it's.